start a committee again to look at efficiencies.
I'd like to move us now to the selection of housing developer for Broadway and Charlton site. Julie Aspinwall-Lamberts is the chair of that committee, but she was not able to be here today, and we have the vice chair, Mike Roberts. Would you come to the table?
Mayor, while he's coming, you need to adjourn the city council and open that.
I will adjourn the meeting of the City Council and convene a meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency, and welcome our presenter.
Hello. The committee is here. You've all seen the packet. I'll be brief. Our committee felt that Lloyd and Associates, and along with MBDJ, made the best presentation, and our recommendation is to go forward with them as the housing developer on this project.
That is a brief presentation.
I think it would be easier for me to answer questions than it would be to actually run you through the whole thing, unless you would like me to.
Okay, Mike, let's just leave you right here. And I'd like, Council, if we could, to go around and have each of you express some of your general interest or concerns about this project. Then we'll get into specific questions. And we'll be here for that. We have 40 minutes for this topic. Do you want to start? Tim, do you have any comments you want to make about this?
No, not right away.
Jim, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, I was a member of the committee along with at least, well, 3 other councilors. I'm supportive of this. I think it's important that the issue around the second group that submitted a proposal that was not interviewed, I think it's important to understand why they were not interviewed. There seems to be some misunderstanding that they were somehow pushed aside. I'm of the opinion that the effort was made by our staff to allow them to get into the process, but the RFP was not sufficiently adhered to, so that if we had allowed them into the interview process, we most likely would have had to junk the entire process, start all over again, so that it was consistent for anyone who might have wanted to participate. That's number one. Number two, I think it's important to credit them for the creativeness of their plan and to hopefully find a venue in the future to be able to use it, but not somehow to cast a shadow over what I consider to be very good work on the part of the committee and a responsible position on the part of the committee when it came time to determine who they would interview. And that's pretty much it.
We'll go around again. So, Sean, first cut.
I'm comfortable with the recommendation of the committee. I was disappointed to see ourselves bound quite as bureaucratically as we were in terms of our response to the Eugene Community Trust proposal, which I would stipulate was not as responsive to the RFQ as crafted as was the Lord proposal. On the other hand, if I look at those 2 proposals in the context of the council's goals around transportation issues and compact urban growth, I think it was clearly the more imaginative of the 2 proposals, and am looking forward to seeing where we can apply that concept in subsequent developments, and would like to have some sense, perhaps from staff, about where those opportunities are and how rapidly they'll be coming online. As we look towards continuing to hold the line on compact urban growth and decreased use of the automobile, the kinds of models that were suggested by the Eugene Community Trust have been proven effective in other environments, albeit Western Europe, and can work here, I believe, as well, and we should put them to the test. So,
Kevin.
I pass for now.
Nancy.
I'm real pleased with the process in general and the plan. It was what I had hoped for. Specifically on housing development, I was also hoping for something that was achieved a lot of hopes we have. Number one, realistic enough to be able to accomplish it, yet creative enough and sensitive enough to Eugene's style, and a transition area between a highly active, and we hope more active, downtown commercial area, the transition area between that and the neighborhood, which starts just immediately within a block, the residential neighborhood. I think that the ideas the committee came up with, and I was on the committee, that the ideas are good, and the responses that we got were both interesting to look at. Sean had mentioned wondering where the opportunities might be to incorporate ideas somewhere else in the community. The Land Use Measures Task Force, as part of TransPlan, did identify several specific areas around the community that have not been developed yet as the appropriate places and as target places to preserve. Instead of developing on a business as usual basis, these are the new areas we ought to try something new. So there are several very specific places identified on a map as hopeful for something new in the way of a nodal concept, which housing without parking lends it to. I guess I don't want to talk anymore if we're just talking generally about the process.
Yeah, right.
That's enough for now.
Barbara.
Thank you. I'm very excited about what the process that we went through, the level of input we were able to gain from the wide variety of people that were there. I thought that the consensus of the group was quite amazing given the range of players. So I was very pleased about that. I'm also very pleased about the outcome. We started out saying we want to build a parking structure for the west end of downtown. You will see on the east end, with that dynamic, we got the Pearl Street garages, a box with parking spaces in it. What we have here is mainly below-grade parking proposal with housing, with commercial, and with an adequate transition between downtown and the residential area, the west. I think it's a very exciting and very innovative proposal, and sometimes when we look at something in the extreme of innovation, like the Eugene Community Trust proposal, we forget how truly innovative this proposal is and how exciting it can be for downtown. I'm also particularly happy that Lorig and Associates have expressed willingness to talk about incorporating a low-income housing component. That's very difficult to do. It will take quite a bit of energy and time for them to seriously pursue that, and I know that they know that, so I'm very pleased about that. Lorig has excellent experience. In particular, one of our committee members, Judy Todd, had lived in a building that they had built right across the street, Lincoln Terraces, and said they were wonderful to live in, and it seems that some of those concepts are integrated into this proposal. I also believe that while we are being innovative, we're also being very pragmatic. We are supplying the needs of downtown, and we have a developer who believes that this actually can happen and is willing to make an investment in it.
Pat.
That's enough, thank you.
Lori.
I appreciate the comments about the Eugene Community Trust, because I do think there was some real innovation in that, and now I understand sort of where the committee went, and I too support the committee's recommendation. I want to call out that this process that we went through in terms of starting, we distinctly had a start and an end and an outcome, and it just feels like something that really has worked, and wanted to kind of acknowledge that for whatever work, the chemistry of it was right. And then I have one question that I'll just raise and can answer it at some point, and more as it's perhaps a financing for me. In the financial participation and financing, it says that we propose to give the city a 10% upside participation in the economic performance of the development with no downside exposure. I'm not a financial guru. What does that mean in my kind of terms?
If you don't mind,
I
Mike.
can explain
If you don't mind, Mike, we'll wait and answer her question until we finish these general comments. But
I'll do my best.
Yeah, you have a few minutes to think about it.
Also acknowledge that we have Hugh Pritchard, who is a member of the Lorig team, and he'll be able to help me with technical stuff like that.
Well, you two can be scratching your heads about that while we see if the people who didn't respond would like to know, and then I'll take a turn. Kevin, you're ready?
Yeah, I disagree with the comments about the process. It's not true that the entire process would have had to been junked. the committee did explicitly put in the RFQ that it could reject all proposals, and the Eugene Community Trust had so many compelling elements to it in terms of TDM, as Sean pointed out, and affordable housing, that it really did merit rejection of both, so that Lorig as well as Eugene Community Trust could have reapplied under the same RFQ, because it is true that Eugene Community Trust was not legitimately responsive, but the committee had that, so it's a bit of a straw man to say the entire process would have had to been junked. It would have also been in the interest of the city's credibility and its advocacy for affordable housing to favorably consider Eugene Community Trust proposal if it had resubmitted under a new RFQ. The city is going to be subsidizing housing here, mainly for wealthier people, and the same interests that are in on this development have been in on the regular developments, so much that it's really an in-group. Eugene Community Trust was naive in applying for it. I mean, the word on the street was clearly that Lorig was a shoo-in for it, so much so that other developers didn't even think it was worth their time to submit a proposal. I said that when a year and a half ago, when somebody first mentioned, hey, let's sell the land, I said this is a done deal for Lorig, as other proposals have been, and something's wrong here. It's not fair to other developers, it's not fair to the taxpayers, and it's not fair to the people who need affordable housing.
Jim, you didn't have a chance. Do you want yet to take turn? Then I'd like to, Pat, not you, say two things. Lorig has a track record that I've appreciated, Lincoln School and the Lincoln Terrace apartments, and I also had the privilege of seeing a couple of their projects in Seattle. Very impressed with the way they took a couple of schools and made them into housing. So I think it's true that we had a sense that this was a firm that knew what they were doing. I appreciated Barbara's pointing out that the alternate proposal was so innovative that it made the Lorig proposal look maybe less innovative by comparison, but it is indeed, I think, a very forward-looking look at what we might do in this particular area. Finally, I too am very interested in that alternate proposal and would like us to identify some possible places that we could encourage. That won't be easy, and we should, with, as Sean says, our goals as they are, pay some attention to that. He and I are trying to do that with a couple other sites, and I think we should turn our attention, Sean, to that effort.
In our
Now,
spare
Tim's ready.
time, Mayor. I'm going to put a motion on the table, and we'll get questions as part of that.
Okay.
Move to accept Lorig and Associates as MBBJ and the housing developers for the Broadway Charlton site and direct the city manager to enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement.
Second.
Okay, this,
I'd like to speak to motion.
do that, and then we'll have discussion and questions, and Lori's question can come up then.
All right, I'm going to vote in favor of this motion. I think this represents quite a bit of good work that was done on part of members of this council and part of members of this community. I think that we're beginning to get closer to a comprehensive vision for the core area. I did appreciate the Eugene Community Trust proposal, and I hope that we can incorporate some of those ideas in other projects as we move forward.
Okay, now more discussion and questions, and you're first, Laura. You want to say yours again, or they can respond?
Did you figure out a way to explain what that means?
You can explain that. Yeah, the idea that the city gets a return with no downside proposal was recognizing that you wouldn't own anything in the private side of the development, so therefore you have no liability or risk, and we propose to give you 10% of the gross cash flow each year.
So it's a gross number, so when you say upside participation, that means...
That would be the cash flow each year and 10% of the proceeds upon sale if it sells.
Oh,
First
okay.
year projection was $24,000 to the city, and it goes up from there.
And then the question, follow-up question to the staff, with that piece of money, what does the city do to it? Does it go into a Does it go back to the Urban Renewal Fund? Does it go into a low-income housing fund? What happens to it?
Well, go ahead.
I think we would, any agreement or contract would spell that out. I'm not sure right now, I have an answer for you, but probably one of those two funds would receive that income.
Will that be a decision point for council?
What we can do is make a recommendation to City Council, and
Okay.
I think you probably want to decide that.
Other questions or comments? Pat?
Just out of curiosity.
Pardon me, Nancy. Nancy, next.
Sorry.
Mike, we always keep in line who gets next.
Because we're considering a specific proposal now on the table, I wanted to highlight that, in my opinion, the committee did a really thorough job of developing interview questions and probing to assure that whichever proposal and developer was selected had the organizational ability to accomplish the project, to accomplish it the way it had been described, on time and within the financial constraints that are imposed, that had the financial ability and enough of a record or legal and what would you say, legal and other financial sorts of assurances in place to make sure that the public's liability was not an issue, and that the proposal and the team needed to have the design ability to achieve the vision that had been laid out. The RFP itself detailed a number of things that the committee would be looking for in reviewing the proposals, and then the questions that were developed by the entire committee did a job of further probing around those areas. I think it was important to bring it all out, and it's not obvious in the packet of materials here what all those questions were and what all the committee's work were, but the committee spent more than a couple hours discussing what it was important to guarantee, assure, look for, hope for as these proposals were reviewed. Finally, I want to mention that the design that is going to be accomplished needs to meet the needs that the committee laid forward and that council adopted, the vision for what this site ought to be. But it's not just this site, again, because because the committee has accomplished something that was really important, and Barbara mentioned this also, this site needs to be compatible with all the surrounding uses, and that is a key element.
Pat,
Thank you.
and then Jim, and Barbara.
Do you have a feeling for the rents that are going to be charged for these units? Is it going to be roughly market rate, or will it be lower than market rate?
I believe they were at this point all market rate.
There's various levels in that. There was more than one size unit. That
You have studios and then 1 and 2 bedroom apartments.
I believe that.
Yeah, there wasn't any larger than that.
Okay, then Jim, you're next.
I want to make sure that this entire council understands that this process brought together a diverse group of people, a diverse group of counselors and a diverse group of stakeholders, if you will, from the community around this project. I think it would be unfair to characterize the end result of the RFP as being pointed toward any one individual potential respondent. It is true that there was only one respondent that was interviewed. But remember, taking all of these people into this committee, finding the common ground that this committee could agree on, developed the RFP, excuse me. And so I don't want us to come off here looking as if there was a railroad job to get a particular developer in place. That was absolutely not the case. And I would hope that the information that comes from this out to the media doesn't look as if it was, because it was not.
Barbara.
Again, I would like to thank the members of the committee that did an excellent job, in particular Julie Orlando, who's not here today did an excellent job of making sure that we reached closure and that we, managed to do our work, which I think was pretty remarkable. This project does a lot of things beyond just provide parking. It provides housing. It provides housing close to employers in the downtown, so it should help impact our parking problems and our transportation problems in downtown. It has an aesthetic component, which I think is very nice. I think that we need to move ahead, and we need to move ahead with consensus that says that this is an excellent project for downtown. We back it, we want to move forward. One of the concerns of the people in downtown has been that this project will hang up on something, that the council will not be able to perform. And the committee did an excellent job. The downtown community was willing, once it saw that we were coming up with a really innovative, creative, positive component for downtown, was willing to put off their desires a little bit in order to accommodate the process. But I do know that it's important that we say that the city can accomplish this, that we can start to turn those vacant lots in downtown into positive parts of our community, and that we really help revitalize downtown by more than just changing current plazas into streets.
Kevin, and then I'd like to have a wind-up comment.
Well, there's a lot of straw men falling here today. It's almost a massacre. The point in this is not whether or not the committee or any particular developer can put together an acceptable design. The committee has control over that. To suggest that this is about the niceness of Lincoln Terrace or whatever they do with the school over there, or a school in Seattle or Portland, that's totally beside the point, completely beside the point. This is not primarily about architecture. The complaint I'm raising is about the economic relationship between those who sell housing as a commodity and those who need housing as a right, or as a personal accommodation. So all this stuff about architecture is secondary to it. The committee could obviously do a good job in building even nicer digs. As long as we're willing to subsidize it, they'll build it. It'll be nice. But the people who really need it won't be able to buy it. And so I ask, where's the public interest in this? As to the assertion that this was a diverse group of people on the committee, it was no such thing. It was a common set of people, many of whom you know and respect, as do I, but it's an in-group of people who were appointed to these kinds of committees to come up with these kinds of proposals. It's simply true. I mean, the history is shown that, and this is history in the making. If we wanted a diverse group of people, we would have had the meetings during non-working hours so people could come after work. We would have had homeless people on there. We would have had some union members, but we didn't have people like that on there. This was a setup as most are in these types of deals, if you will. So let's not confuse the issue.
My comment relates to the composition of the housing. We have talked about these blocks now, I guess, for the 12 years I've been on the council and mayor, and I am particularly satisfied that it's moving ahead, and want to commend Nancy, who got it going, and the other committee members, Barbara, for her enthusiasm for it. We wrestled with whether or not this could be low-income housing. It isn't, of course, an appropriate site for families. We decided there's no schools nearby. It isn't something that should be family, particularly targeted toward low-income families with children. And the issue of could you have some affordable or low-income units in it is being faced on a financial basis. And I have continued to hope that there can be a mix of units in this facility, and that it will have a mixture of tenants, that the room or apartment rates will allow that. But I still have Linda, and then we'll vote on that motion and go to the next one. Oh, Mike, pardon me, you wanted to comment.
Just to clear up one thing, the selection was really for a team member, not a development proposal. I want to make that real clear to you.
we chose Lorig and their team as a team member for this development. We did not choose their design. That design will not come until we sit down as a committee with both the garage architects and consultants and Lorig's people, and then come up with a design. So I want to be real clear, we're not approving any design. That was not a basis for our decision. We looked more at the team, I think, than the few pictures they showed, because most of us realized they didn't have enough data to really know whether they could do what they drew or not at that point. So I want to be real clear that it was not on that. The committee has no set idea on design. Some of the concerns we've heard today could easily be brought up again and have another possibility for address as we go through that design phase, because we do have a lot to work out between the two professional groups for this whole proposal. I'd also like to point out too that some of you may have noticed the timeline has changed from what originally was thought of when this whole process started several months ago. I think it's the third or fourth page. We basically came to the realization of the committee that it was not possible to do what everyone had hoped originally to do. It was going to cost the city money, probably cost us in quality, and everybody was going to lose their hair over the original schedule. Had discussed and basically added another year to the whole process. The committee felt we'd get a better product for a better price by doing that. Everybody seemed to agree that that was far better than just trying to hurry up and get another box to put cars in out there right away.
Good. Hey, Linda and then Lori.
That's essentially what I was going to say too, and also just to remind council that we expect to have the design back to you in May or June.
This issue came up to us back a while ago with the employers on the West End not having enough parking and wanting to make a commitment to downtown. Was this timeline all negotiated with all parties?
Yes, Jim Adelot, who is in the crowd today, was on the committee, and that was discussed about the employment required parking. And Jim also agreed that the timeline wasn't going to be easy, but he would rather have a better product.
Okay. Yes, Pat, you have a follow-up question, then we'll vote on this motion.
As you say, we don't have a design yet, I understand that, but as you do go through the design process, the numbers that you outline here, 192 housing units, 12,000 square foot of retail or commercial space, those numbers will remain mostly unchanged?
The retail is a function of a city code requirement. It says that we will have so many lineal foot of retail surrounding parking in parking structures. That's written into the code. So there's a minimum set there that we can never go below. You see that in the other garages around town. That ground floor has a little bit of retail stuff in it. But the housing is based on their hope that they can go over top of the parking and get more units up there. That still remains up in the air as we work through this final design now with Walker & Associates, who will be doing the garage design. There's a lot of issues to work out there as we try to stack more things on top of other things. You get into more issues. Is that a garage cost and therefore the city pays, or is that a housing cost and the developer pays? So as we combine those two things, it gets much more complicated. That one will be the number that changes the most. The parking number of spaces will probably remain very similar to what you asked the committee to come up with. The retail will remain that's set by code, but the housing number will probably be the one that gives and takes the most as a design.
192 is probably the high end. If anything, it'll be reduced.
Yeah, I would assume. Yeah, go ahead.
We tried to design the densest, the best urban project we thought we could, and I want to emphasize how complex the project is and give you some feeling for where we'll be in the future. This is groundbreaking for this size community. This has been done in some large cities. We can't find any community our size that's done this kind of public parking, density, apartments, mixed use. What that means is it's extremely difficult to get financed. Our experience with Lincoln School, now everybody says, oh sure, you could do that, and if we had 2 more schools, we could do that. It took us 2 years to get financed. No Oregon bank would touch it. We could not raise the equity financing here. Finally got financed out of the Seattle Bank in just 2 years. And I want to say we designed the densest and we think the highest quality urban project we could. We have every hope to work with the city and get it done. This was very difficult, the same way the other one was, and so we'll be working the best we can toward that goal. The 192 units was the densest we felt we could get it. If we have to come off of that because of other parking restrictions and things.
Well, I hope you can come at least close to that number.
So do we.
Thank you.
Okay, Council, we will now vote on the motion to accept Lorig Associates and NBBJ as the housing developers for the Broadway Charnelton side, and direct the city manager to enter into an exclusive negotiating agreement. Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed. Passes 7-1, Councilor Hornbuckle opposed. Then I will adjourn the meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency and reconvene the meeting of the City Council to discuss the parking funds, and I'm not clear why it is I am no longer the Urban Renewal Agency on this one.
Yeah.
Okay, would you put motion on the table?
I move to allocate $230,000 in parking funds, parking garage preliminary design services, and parking bond feasibility analysis.
Second.
Okay, discussion and questions. I don't think we'll go around again on this, but are there specific questions around this? Pat, you had one.
How much is in the parking fund currently?
In excess of $2 million in the parking reserve fund.
And how much is contributed annually approximately?
Something in the neighborhood of $200,000 a year.
Other questions or comments? If not, then we will vote on the motion to allocate $230,000 in parking funds for the parking garage preliminary design services and parking bond feasibility analysis. Those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed. That passes 7-1 also. Okay, Council. We are ready then to move to the executive recruiter, and thank you, Mike Roberts and staff and councilors who have worked so hard on this issue. We look forward to the May report.